Hello there folks, my name is Spooks and welcome back to another episode of Box Office Chat. This is the show where I break down the top 5 domestic box office results, see where each movie landed, and see how well each movie did. So let's get started. Number 5 was Thanksgiving, making $7 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $24 million and a worldwide total of $28 million. So this was another solid weekend for Thanksgiving, especially for a horror movie. This had an incredible second weekend drop-off, falling 32%, which, again, for a horror movie, especially this type of horror movie, is exceptionally good here. Obviously, because it was Thanksgiving, I think a lot of horror fans and maybe even some casual moviegoers wanted to celebrate the holiday by seeing this twisted, dark horror movie, and it seems to be paying off for the movie itself. Like most horror movies, this did not cost a lot to make. It only costed $15 million, and worldwide it is pretty much on the cusp of surpassing its doubling point of $30 million worldwide, as well as surpassing that milestone domestically, which, given how close it is to surpassing these milestones, I could see that happening within the coming days. So yeah, overall, once again, Thanksgiving is looking like to be a pretty modest hit for itself, another win for the horror genre in an already spectacular year for the genre. It will be interesting to see how this does in the coming weeks because, well, Thanksgiving is over, and to put it lightly, I don't think a lot of people are going to want to see a Thanksgiving movie in the middle of December, if you know what I mean. So that will definitely be interesting to see where this movie ends up, how it holds throughout the remainder of its theatrical run. But otherwise, yeah, given it's already pretty much a success, I don't think there's anything to worry about. This is already such a big hit overall that I can't see anyone being upset at where it's at right now. Number 4 was Trolls Band Together, making $17 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $64 million and a worldwide total of $146 million. So Trolls is also holding very well. It dropped just 41% this weekend, which was a bit on the bigger end in my opinion. Given that it was Thanksgiving, I thought a bit more people would go check it out, but this is still a pretty solid total to be at overall. It's pretty much $50 million-ish away from surpassing its doubling point worldwide of its $95 million budget, and I think it's going to be able to do that. It is also roughly $40 million away from surpassing the $100 million milestone domestically, and I think it's also going to be able to do that in the coming weeks. The word of mouth on this has been very strong. It was very successful in the daily numbers. It was absolutely killing it on that aspect, and it's looking like a much needed win for DreamWorks after the disappointment that was Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken. It goes to show that this franchise is still going strong and audiences are still really enjoying these movies. I think it's definitely going to be able to carry itself throughout the rest of December and leading into Christmas. This is looking like I said earlier, a much needed win for DreamWorks at the moment, and another successful animated film all around. So not much more else to say here except job well done. Number 3 was Wish, opening with $19 million this weekend, and including the 5-day numbers, it adds to a domestic total of $31 million and a worldwide total of $48 million. This is the 7th biggest opening for an animated film this year. It was able to top Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken, but it still sits behind Paw Patrol the Mighty Movie, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, Elemental, Trolls Band Together, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and the Super Mario Bros. Movie. It is also the 8th biggest opening for a family film this year, once again topping Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken, but still sitting behind the previously mentioned animated films and The Little Mermaid. This definitely came in under a lot of people's expectations, certainly mine. I thought the marketing really sold this movie well. I thought there was going to be a lot more interest given that it's Disney's centennial and this was the big movie they were going to celebrate it with that. I thought that would have piqued more interest, but clearly not. Not many people wanted to go check this out. It came in $10 million under Elemental from earlier this year, which was surprising, but not only that, it also even came in a bit under Encanto, which came out around Thanksgiving in 2021, and that was released under worse circumstances. So what happened here? Well, first off, like I said earlier, I just don't think there was that much interest in this movie than the initially thought of. In all honesty, I think maybe Trolls was a much more anticipated movie for families to go check out because it had the better opening, and when you compare both their numbers this weekend, there's a $2 million difference between the two of them. And I think Trolls was able to steal a lot of this movie's audience from it, with those two movies being released so close to each other. Maybe had they been spaced out a bit, one coming out much earlier in the month, I think maybe we could have seen a much bigger difference between the two of them. Maybe they could have been able to share the spotlight together and have their cake. But unfortunately, I think because those movies were too close to each other, I think that because of that, a lot of families had to make the tough decision to choose one over the other, and they ultimately chose to go see Trolls Band together. And I also think that maybe word of mouth and initial response and reviews also hindered this movie. This is one of the lowest rated Disney animated films. It's the first one to be rotten since, I believe, Chicken Little, and I think that may have turned a lot of people off from seeing this movie, unfortunately, as opposed to something like another animated film from a different studio. With Disney, you come to expect a much higher level of performance from their movies, and unfortunately with this coming off as not that great, I think may have turned people off. And I'm also continuing to worry about its legs at the box office, as it did get an A- cinema score, which isn't bad, but it's certainly not great. The only other animated film to get an A- cinema score rating was Ruby Gillman. I don't think this is going to be as disastrous as that movie was, but when this is one of the other animated films to get an A- cinema score rating, I think we are going to see some pretty troublesome legs here. I'm not sure if this is going to be able to pull off an Elemental, because word of mouth on that movie was so great and so positive, where this one is not really that, unfortunately. And to add more salt to the wound, this is a $200 million movie, folks, so this opening ain't great either. And with my worries about its legs, I'm not sure if it's gonna be able to get to that total worldwide. So yeah, overall, Wish is looking like a pretty big disappointment. Again, who knows, maybe this will turn out to be like the next Elemental. I've been wrong on this show many times, but given this opening, given the poor reception from critics and audiences, I have my doubts on this movie being financially successful. So yeah, ultimately a pretty disappointing opening for Wish. We'll see where it goes from here, but I'm not expecting much. Number 2 was Napoleon, opening with $20 million this weekend, and including the 5-day numbers, it adds to a domestic total of $32 million and a worldwide total of $79 million. Obviously, this is one of the more bigger surprises this weekend, as not only did this nearly 3-hour adult drama beat out a Disney movie, but it actually opened in second place, which is definitely one of the more unexpected things to happen this weekend. I was bamboozled. I did expect this movie to exceed expectations, but not to this degree. This is certainly a very surprising number for this movie to be at, especially worldwide. Given the type of movie this is a pretty solid start, I will say, and I'm sure Apple TV Plus is happy to see this movie ranking as high as it was able to do and bringing in that audience. It did seem like the marketing was a lot better than initially set out to be, and the interest and audience buzz certainly was a lot bigger than I think a lot of people expected this to be. However, this still isn't in a great position, as like Killers of the Flower Moon, this is a ridiculously expensive movie, $200 million budget. This did come in a bit under Killers of the Flower Moon's opening, and while yeah, a $79 million opening isn't really bad, that's definitely nearly half of the budget made worldwide already, but again, you still need to make a good sum of that back at least by the second weekend, and you also need to double that, which I'm not sure if this movie's going to be able to do. The word of mouth on this is not great. It got a B- cinema score, which is lower than Killers of the Flower Moon, significantly lower, I might add. So I'm not expecting great legs for this, and with the expensive budget this movie has, that's not a great thing to say. I really think Apple TV Plus is probably going to have to cut back on the budgets for the movies they release into theaters, or try and make these look much more bigger and like the must-see movies you need to see, so they can at least get some of that like Oppenheimer money, because otherwise these movies aren't going to be financially successful theatrical wise. They may bring in some new subscribers and tens of millions of views to their streaming service, but if they want to be financially successful at the box office, they're probably going to have to cut back on these budgets. So yeah, overall, well, yes, given the type of movie it is and given the competition it was going up against this weekend, this is definitely a surprising opening. I wouldn't be upset about this, but if in terms of financial success, things aren't looking great. Hopefully things improve upon this with Argylle, Apple TV Plus's next film that's going to be released in theaters in February. But yeah, as far as this movie goes, definitely some interesting numbers here. We're gonna have to keep an eye out on where this movie ends up going. But yeah, still very interesting numbers all around. And finally, let's end the video off with the number one movie of the weekend, which was once again The Hunger Games: Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, making $29 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $98 million and a worldwide total of $197 million. Another big surprise this weekend, as if you may recall, I had my doubts on this movie holding very well given the competition and the B+ cinema score rating. I thought it would face a steeper drop, but clearly I was wrong, and I will admit that I was wrong. Clearly there was a lot more interest in this movie. This was the big movie to see for Thanksgiving. A lot more people really liked this movie than what was led to believe, which makes me question how this got a B+, but that's not for me to ask. This movie is already such a massive hit overall. Again, this movie only costed $100 million. It's pretty much made that back domestically, and it's pretty much doubled that worldwide, which is great to see here, that one of these major blockbusters was able to be financially successful. This is looking like it's going to be the biggest movie in theaters since probably Five Nights at Freddy's, which may be hard to believe for some of you. I really do think that with this movie getting the SAG-AFTRA interim agreement much earlier than a lot of the other blockbusters really helped this movie out. And again, the word of mouth has been a lot better than what was led to believe. It really crushed it on the daily numbers. It gave Wish and Napoleon a run for its money, and given that, you know, for a blockbuster, the cheap budget of $100 million, it's already more than successful. It's definitely going to be one of the more profitable movies out right now. And I like Trolls. I think this is definitely going to be able to carry itself throughout December, maybe even until the holiday season, as it seems like a lot of people are really liking this movie way more than I expected it to. So yeah, a neat little surprise here for The Hunger Games. It's looking like it's going to be a pretty big hit overall, not to the degree of The Hunger Games back then, but still a pretty solid total for this movie to be at. Definitely a much needed win for Lionsgate after some of the flops like Expendables and all the other stuff. But yeah, once again, still a very solid total. Another successful weekend for The Hunger Games. I look forward to seeing how this movie can keep going up from this point forward. So yeah, overall, good job. And those were your top 5 domestic box office results for this weekend, but we're not quite done yet, as we've got another week ahead of us and new movies hitting theaters. And this weekend we have one new major wide release, that film being Beyonce's Renaissance film. Just like Taylor Swift, Beyonce is getting her own concert film that is meant to show off her Renaissance tour that was highly acclaimed, highly successful. While I don't think the movie will be quite as big as Taylor Swift, given that I felt like Taylor Swift's concert film had a much bigger marketing presence, there was a lot more buzz, certainly a lot more interest in that film. Where here, I haven't seen a lot of promos and not a lot of people talking about this, but I still think this movie is probably going to open a lot bigger than a lot of people expect it to, given how massive Beyonce's fan base is, and just saying her name, you just know everything about her. She's just that well known and that beloved. I could really see this movie surprising. Don't think it's going to be one of the top 10 biggest openings of the year. Certainly not going to top Taylor Swift's opening or her concert film, but I can definitely see this being a neat little surprise, something that may catch people off guard. So yeah, overall, not much more else to say. I'm expecting some pretty good things for this movie, but we'll see how well this movie truly does, as well as the rest of the movies that land in the top 5 on the next Box Office Chat. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of Box Office Chat. What did you all think of the results? Were you satisfied, unsatisfied? Comment down below and let me know. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you like this channel, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all the social media links right there. And until next time, everyone, stay sharp.